Have you ever heard this song? Everything old is new again. I said, everything old is new again. Well, that's our topic today because whether it's your grandma's secrets or timeless treasures, we've got a fabulous panel of experts who are going to share why yesterday's wisdom might just save tomorrow. So let's talk. Oh, welcome to the Fab Show. And I am your host this week. I am Gloria Grace Rand, one of the Fab Five hosts. And I'm so excited to be able to introduce our fabulous panel because they are going to be really sharing a lot of wisdom today. So I am going to, actually, I'm going to go back to this, and I'm going to start with the ladies, and then we'll save our gentlemen for last. So, Patricia, can you share with us where you're coming in from today, who you are, and where you're coming in from?
Thank you, Gloria. Yes, I'm Patricia Alton, and I'm coming from DeLand, Florida. And I'm so happy to be here with everyone.
We're glad you're here. And Robyn, we're going to go. I was going to give it away, but I'm not going to do that.
Everyone, I'm Robyn Jordan, and I'm tuning in from Queensland, Australia.
All right. Welcome, Robyn. And over to my left as I'm looking on the screen, Una.
Hi, everybody. I am Una Doyle, and I am coming in from the UK in the northwest, near Manchester, probably where you'll have heard of because of the football.
Wonderful. And finally, last but certainly not least.
Hi, I'm Carson Shaffer, and I'm coming to you from a little town called Christmas, Florida, just outside of the Space Center.
All right. Well, welcome. Well, we are so glad to have all of you here. And I also want to welcome our digital audience as well. We want to hear from where you're coming in from too. So, leave that in the comments along with, hashtag live or replay if you happen to be watching this on the replay. And so, yeah, I talked about at the beginning of the show today that we're going to be diving into the name of the show is Valuing Vintage Wisdom and Wares. And today's topic was actually inspired by the fact that you may not know this, but it is National Old Stuff Day. And yeah, believe it or not. And it's a day, you can find a new use for an old item or take something old and freshen it up, which I think some of our people on this panel do some of this stuff, or look at things from a new perspective. And so that's where I want to start today. And I'm going to share Patricia's video and then have her chat about it.
I am Crone, the elder, the wisdom keeper, and I invite you to come sit with me in circle, and I will share stories of my 7 decades upon beloved Mother Earth. And I will listen deeply as you share your story of your dreams, of your desires, of your hopes for the future, and for all of our future generations. Blessed be. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
All right, awesome. And I'm going to put you in the spotlight here to share a little bit more about that, because I've known Patricia for many years now, and so I know a lot about her. But I'm going to let her share now with you a little bit more about what you were talking about there, Patricia.
Thank you, Gloria. Well, when we hear the word crone, we probably think a little bit about old hag. It's often considered negative, when actually it's an honor. The word crone is really honoring the elder. And that's who I am. I am an elder in my 7th decade, and I am a wisdom keeper. So through all of the experiences that I've had throughout my life, I now can teach others, especially the youth. And where we have a society that really focuses and almost adores youth, and we try to be like that, and as we grow older, we may feel that we become invisible. Well, if we can stand up and claim that we are crone, that we are the elders, we are the wisdom keepers, we have so much in the way of experiences to share. So
Yeah, I love that. And I was showing, you had sent me a few of your pictures, and I love the picture of you in your dress, in your wedding dress, because you just got married a couple of years ago. So, anybody want to comment about, because I really do think we really have gotten away from, I think, valuing, wisdom that we get with age. It's important. When we're young, we're dumb, frankly, sometimes, although we think we know everything. But then as we get older, we realize, oh, yeah, I didn't know as much. Anybody else want to chime in there? Yeah, go ahead, Una.
Yeah, so I had the experience of so I work with this amazing nutritionist and herbalist, and because of changes that were happening, hormonal, etc., and in a call, she called me, well, you're now a crone, and I was horrified. I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, no, this is a good thing. She said, this is because you're wise. You might do less, but you do it smarter. You do it more strategically, and you don't have to kind of rush around everywhere. So I've had that experience, Patricia, of not really, going from not really understanding the meaning of the word and kind of falling into the, I guess, what you would see in a lot of film and TV in terms of the portrayal of older women and the crone, as you say, as a hag, as a witch, etc. And it's like, well, actually, no, we can be wise, we can teach others, we can really implement the lessons that we have spent a long time and a lot of energy and sometimes pain learning.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Patricia, what's like one maybe piece of wisdom that maybe you either you've discovered for yourself, or something even that you've learned from, like, past generations, like from, your own, ancestors?
One thing that is so important is that we do honor our ancestors and bring into our own lives the traditions, because that's how we can honor them, and we can continue to pass that knowledge on when we share their traditions, their challenges. And it's really all about honoring. And the word crone actually means crown. So if we can think of putting that crown of wisdom on, that we have actually gathered through our DNA and our ancestors, and then pass on the crown of wisdom to leave a legacy for future generations. That's what it's all about.
Oh yeah, absolutely. In fact, that's really that's what our show has been a lot about over for several months now, and I'll share a little something about that a little bit later on. But I love that. So I'm going to put you on the spotlight as well, because I know we can get a male perspective here on this subject.
I didn't know if you had a video or not.
I don't have a video from you, so I'm just going to go ahead and just put you in the spotlight and let you chat about this subject.
I've had an interesting year because I've gotten some really senior cybersecurity certifications and tried to find a job, and I found out that I'm old. I talk to the guys that used to work for me, and they all go, Carson, remember when we were like 28, how old somebody 60 was? And I said, oh, yeah, unbelievably. And they're like, yeah, that's your age now. And so being in the IT field, it's all these really bright people. And the trick is I have to be able to talk to them for 5 minutes so they can find out that I'm not 100 years old and I actually can do stuff. So a lot of what I do is working with younger people and trying to get them to understand a little bit of wisdom. And usually, if you can see it from their point of view, you can get them to understand the wisdom.
Yeah. And I think we were talking a little bit beforehand too, that you were talking about your son has some interesting perspective on this as well. I wonder if you could share that story too, because I think it's helpful.
Yeah, my son is a wildlife technician for a local wildlife management area, and he flies a fire starting drone. He does all kinds of stuff, but he also fixes tractors. And they have an old Massey Ferguson tractor, which is bulletproof. Parts are cheap to get. They just got a brand new 2024 John Deere tractor. He says you get in it, it's like a spaceship. It's all screens, which are now, of course, all zip tied and rubber banded in place because everything's breaking. It's all plastic. When they need to get a new part, he said pretty much the identical thing for Massey Ferguson that costs $70 is $2,200 from John Deere. And the one that got me was, he said, to put it into 4-wheel drive or to lock the diff, which means all 4 tires turn together, it has to be within 3 degrees of level. So it's got to be perfectly level. Driving along, falls into a hole. There's no way to engage 4-wheel drive because the computer says you have to be level. So it's vintage, but maybe not that great.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point, is that we have in this day and age, we've sort of gotten into having, this throwaway mentality that it's like, it's cheaper to just buy new things, and if they break down, oh well, they break down. But the things that we had in the past really lasted a long time, and there's a reason for that. And I think that's my cue to myself, in fact, that I'm going to put Robyn's video. I'm going to play Robyn's video right now.
There is something that speaks to my soul about vintage pieces and the era of the bygone days. And it's not just about the beauty, it's about the stories. It's about that era of pausing, where they spend time and they're willing to invest hours and sometimes, in some cases, years to be able to create something truly memorable that lasts. We are living in such a disposable era, and it is something so beautiful to be able to have something that is decades, centuries old at times, and to really marvel at the time and the effort that people have gone to make it, to create it. And I think it's also about the way they gathered together, the way the woman would gather together to create something beautiful, whether it be with their embroidery or sewing, and creating beautiful moments together where they paused and slowed down in a world where we're just driven on this habitual hamster wheel. There's something beautiful about just letting the air out, that air out of the balloon, where you start to be able to allow your creative juices to flow. I think about all the stories that these vintage pieces could tell, and I particularly love recreating something from them and preserving them, whether it be in my crafts or whether it be part of my furnishing. I love to bring something back to its former glory. There's something fulfilling in that for me as far as my creativity, but there's something beautiful about preserving something that once held a prime position in someone's home and their families. So there's many things that I love about vintage pieces and the era of the Victorian days where the pace was slower and things that were meaningful really did matter.
I love that, Robyn, and I loved all those lovely pictures that you sent me. I hope you don't mind. I put them into the video so that we could see them up close. So tell us a little bit more about all of that.
Well, I guess when I was looking at all of them and listening to myself, I was reminded how grateful I am to have had my grandparents and my mother's input into my life. And they were one of my grandparents they were pioneering people. And when I think about wisdom in those times, I think about the words. They were really they focused on what mattered. And that's what I feel we've lost in these times, where mastery really is about the art of falling in love with the process, not the results. And the best conversations and connections happened around the kitchen table rather than just the comments in your feed. And I feel like some of the most beautiful times that I've had is being creating beautiful things, and that process of that mindfulness, and how we pause, we start to hear that inner voice and that whisper within us, rather than just carrying on habitually and not even really knowing what's important to us or what really matters. So all of these things I really have treasured, and I've been on a journey about actually letting go of so much of that ambition-driven world, even though we need to, through my own circumstances, I feel like I'm just starting out in life in my 60s through circumstances that I wouldn't have imagined I would be facing. So I am in business, and yet what in my mind, it's letting go of the ambition-driven world and stepping into the meaning-driven world of those things that are timeless and really do matter.
Yeah, absolutely. That is so good. And but all of those pieces also that, and I appreciate the valuing our wisdom that we have from our generations, but then you are dealing with also working with some of this furniture and rehabbing it and things like that as well. Is that?
Yeah. Well, that's really just been my own creative pastime, really. And some of those pieces were like ready for the dump. I don't know what you call it over there, but the landfill. And you just wouldn't have believed how terrible they look. And that big cabinet was actually, it didn't show the full picture, but that just turned out so beautiful. And it was really sort of just had some, and I actually sold it, but the old chest was like hundreds of years old, and it was from a very dear friend that had passed on, and she had lived in a family farm that had been passed on to her through generations. And just recreating those old vintage pieces that are solid. And I can pour in my own essence and my own character into these pieces, and it costs very little. And some of these beautiful, like Victorian pieces, period style furnitures, people just are almost giving them away, and you can recreate them and bring them into the modern era. I love painting, and so I get a lot of pleasure and fulfillment, not only creatively, but restoring something back to its original, it's not original, is it, into a new sense of glory, really, which will go on for future generations. Because when you think about it, everything is just so temporal. People do not expect things to last. And when I was in Italy, that is something that really hit home to me, that beauty takes time, and in some cases it's hundreds of years that it evolves. And when you think about like Leonardo da Vinci and the breathtaking, you know, view of some of the ceilings in the churches in Italy, it really just, you know, blew my mind at the amount of hours and dedication that these days everybody wants a magic pill for everything, for relationships, for, you know, business, for creating. It's really a bit sad, really, and I think it's up to us to bring these sorts of, you know, these values back into the world that we're living in.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else want to chime in on that, piggyback? Yeah, go ahead, Patricia.
Robyn, I love your speaking of gathering together. And that's where the wisdom is shared in the story. So when you're creating in the circle with the beautiful embroidery or crafts or whatever, those old traditions, and you would often find different generations, and that's where we need to keep those values going on. Have these gatherings, have these wisdom circles, that's what I call them, and share with each other through all of the generations. And what you were saying is just so beautiful, because that's where it all begins, is in telling each other's stories. And that was just beautiful. Thank you.
So some of those pieces in that square of embroidery were pieces of crochet and buttons from my grandma's old button tin that went from her to my mother to me, and what was it doing just in a cupboard, and I wanted to bring some of these things out and use them in some of her beautiful linen, you know, table runners that had all, you know, disintegrated at corners, but I was able to find little bits that I can incorporate. So when I look at it, it tells me a story about them.
Yeah, that is so good. Carson, just curious, because I know you've also, you know, deal with you're dealing with some of the things dealing with your business and whatnot, and what other examples maybe of advice that you've even gleaned over the years that are you either passing on to others or you know that you've appreciated?
The one piece of advice I wish I had gotten, I never did, was people going, "Oh yeah, you were doing great. We really thought you were going to succeed in this." And you're like, well, nobody told me this. That's why I didn't continue. So I've always been sure to tell younger people, "Hey man, you're doing a great job. You know, people are watching, they notice it, and you're really doing good. Keep up the good work." And invariably they're like, "Oh, thank you so much. I had no idea." So that's what I can tell to everybody, is let people know when they're doing a good job. I'm military. I grew up with 2 combat veterans from World War II for parents. I mean, they didn't tell you did a good job. My mother's motto was never explain, never complain. But that's not the world we live in, and it makes it really rough. And a kind word to someone makes such a difference in their life. You know, so let's try it. The other thing is, it's not just items. I live on a farm, and we have horses, we've had cattle, pigs, with chickens, you know, partridge in a pear tree. And I'll go out to feed the animals in the evening, and I really try to take comfort and solace in the fact that humankind has been giving feed and water to farm animals since 10,000 years. 20, I don't know. But you try to take some comfort in the routine that has been done by people for countless centuries. So when my brain's, I'm a cybersecurity engineer, so my brain's going a million miles an hour. I always try to go, no, stop and do, you know, as they say, you know, do the dishes, be doing the dishes. So be feeding the animals when you feed the animals.
Yeah, that's so good. I love that. How about you, Una? Oh, not sure where we're getting some interesting noise from. That was interesting. What are your thoughts on this?
I think Carson makes a great point in terms of, a little bit of kindness goes a long way. I think it is important for people to understand when they're doing a good job. I also think it's important for people to understand when they're not doing a good job. And all too often, business owners and managers, they're too afraid to have those conversations. They believe in hope, but in this instance, hope is not a good thing. It's not a plan of action. It's not having those candid conversations. And so, as a business coach, that's often one of the things I'm helping my clients do, is to have those conversations, both positive and negative, because they're always going to lead to a positive outcome in one way or another. And whereas if things are just left, then that doesn't happen. And it's actually, look, there's a saying, be cruel to be kind. I don't believe you need to be cruel in the way that you do something, but the ethos behind that is actually, change it to be candid to be kind. Have those conversations. And I also really liked what Carson was saying about, when you're feeding the animals, feed the animals, switch off what's going on in the head. And that's one of the things that I love about my hobby of sewing, because as a creative person, my my mind is going a lot, various ideas, etc. And so I'm able to get in flow in a different way through sewing.
Love that. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and share your video right now.
Vintage style, not vintage values. That's a hashtag that a lot of vintage sewists use on their posts. And the reason is because they don't want people to think that they subscribe to perhaps things like the racism or the sexism that existed in the vintage eras that we love the style of. And I think there's lessons here for businesses as well, in the way that you don't want as a business to be stuck in the past. It's important to keep evolving and embracing the changes in the landscape. Of course, a big one right now is AI. It is revolutionizing business, and people need to get on board and look at what they can do with that. However, it's also important not to throw out what works. And in fact, I'll often say to people, well, how do you think people promoted their businesses before social media, before AI? Principles still apply.
I loved that. So because that is the thing, is that people think, oh, we've got to glob onto the new shiny thing, but old ways of doing things still work. So talk a little bit maybe more about that, about the value of, focusing in on not just the new.
Well, it's really interesting. Like, one of the oldest books on advertising that still exists, called Scientific Advertising. I'm seeing people plugging that book into AI and then using it as a tool, but because the principles still apply. One of I think my all-time favorite book is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And, it's so interesting. If you actually read the prologue of that book, what he did was he studied, 50 years behind, like from the 50s backwards. Okay. And then he looked at what had happened since the 1950s. And before the 1950s, all the self-help, personal development, kind of books were all about character. But from the 50s onwards, then it was all about personality. And there's some really subtle nuances in those principles, in the way that you apply those things. And I just love it. I always say that if you only ever read one personal development book, make it this one, because it's going to teach you about, about how to respond to life, about being proactive instead of reactive. It talks about moving from being dependent to independent to interdependent. And look, nobody can achieve anything worthwhile without being interdependent. There's got to be some form of collaboration, some form of teamwork. When you see people in the news that have achieved amazing things, they didn't do it on their own. They had teams behind them. They had partners and families behind them. Yet there's this culture in the media of, it's just this one person. So I think, looking at principles and concepts, and models, mental models as well, I'm big on that. I think those things are really important. And quite often they've been around a long time. And then you're just looking at, okay, well, how do we apply this in this context, in this environment, in this customer landscape? How do you do that? And I think then when I look at my hobby of sewing, I'm taking often, oh, here we go. Yes, that's what I'm wearing some things as well. But it's, I'm often mixing up the things that I have thrifted, things that I have made. I might have made them from modern fabrics. Like I'm wearing a jacket and a skirt right now that I have upcycled. I bought them in charity shops. I upcycled them. This blouse I bought in a charity shop. I dyed it to get the color I want. But then I also will have vintage things like this brooch, this necklace that I'm wearing right now. This actually I inherited from my mother when she passed. And so I think we can mix things up, and we just need to be smart about it, really. And yeah, I think the one thing about the sewing as well is when we look to take what we can from the past that's in the positive, like I love the vintage style. Not everybody has to be in that. That's absolutely fine. But I do it my way. We can personalize it. So we can take principles, like I can take principles of silhouettes and then use modern fabrics to achieve that. Where I can, I will upcycle and thrift as well, to provide that bit of sustainability, because, oh my gosh, like fast fashion is horrendous. A truckload of clothes goes to landfill or is incinerated every second. Like boom, boom, that's another truck. Boom, that's another truck. So even when we're using modern fabrics, when you make your own clothes, or if you have a dressmaker make them for you, they're going to fit properly. They're probably going to be made of better quality fabrics than fast fashion, and you're going to take care of them. So they will last. They'll last a long time, rather than things that are just changing by the seasons. And I guess that's another advantage of vintage fashion as well. I'm not trying to be because it's whatever I wear, it's in fashion for the vintage era.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we're gonna come back to this in just one second. I was seeing a bunch of purple hearts go by, and we always like to honor and especially for one particular person in our community who has passed on, but also to remember all of those who may have transitioned. We just want you all to know that you are forever in our hearts. And yeah, I do love what you were talking about, Una, about this. Yeah, I know I've heard like lots of stories where they talk about, the clothing and things, and that. I mean, frankly, this shirt I'm wearing, I got at a thrift store. Okay, because it was like practically brand new, and it's actually similar to one that I had bought at a store brand new, and I was just thrilled to get it, and at a fraction of the cost. And there's so much value out there. I mean, where I live here in Melbourne, Florida, there are all kinds of lovely stores where you can buy, antiques, but also slightly slightly used, gently used things. I know that there's a phrase for that, I think somewhere. But you don't have to just necessarily go out and spend money on buying something new. And as we talked about earlier, some of the things that are brand new, they don't last as long anyway. And so it's really good to find some of these other things that do have that lasting quality because they were quality made. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I thought someone was going to chime in there.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking about the word respect, how that really encompasses so much of the vintage days, and to bring that into our modern days, because respect of even our elders, isn't it, and our families, and how that overflows into our business and the people that we work with, our clients, and respect for what we did have, our possessions, where people actually looked after things and they lasted for decades. And often that also was reflecting on the quality of what they were made from. And as you were saying, Una, about the fabrics, with cottons and silks and our natural fibers, rather than so many of the chemically laced fabrics that are now, and cheap is not always best, is it? That's what we need to remember. Something classic, something old that you can restore is often so much better. But I really felt the word respect was important just to ponder on this whole topic.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And Patricia, were you going to add something too? Yeah.
Yes, Una, I just love the fact that you wear your mother's necklace and have almost repurposed that. And when we can do that and have a piece of jewelry and wear it close to our heart, we know that that person is just a thought away, and we can feel their energy. And I just honor that. And I love that, Una, that you do that. It's beautiful.
Yeah. And I'm just, go ahead, Carson. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm an engineer, so I'm like a mechanical type person, even though I'm a double E. And I have tools. I remember when my dad died, and I was standing there holding my father's hammer and my grandfather's hammer, and I was like, oh boy, it's me. And now I live on a farm, which means I can have as many tools as I want. I have a lot. But it's 4 generations worth of tools. And as my son says, wow, grandpa's tools really last. And I go, yeah, and they're going to go another 100 years. But the newer stuff, I was a manufacturing engineer, and you can make something cheap and sell it for the same price that you sold something very expensive and repairable. And they just rather do it the cheap and maximize profit. And so that's why I love old tools. Just finished rebuilding the engine in my son's car, or son's truck rather. And yeah, we fix stuff. I live on a farm, but you go to England and you see what real age is. Living here in Florida, everything. So there's no building here that's more than 20 years old. So that's the thing that I love about Europe, is you get to see permanence and time.
Yeah, that's so
Interesting
true.
point.
Yeah. And, we talked about it at the very beginning, and I think all of this is about, this valuing this vintage wisdom and the things that we have. It is also, when we were talking about legacy at the beginning. And so I want to actually play a wonderful song that deals with this as well.
In the quiet moments, when the sun begins to rise, we find the strength within us. In the stories of our lives, not in gold or glory, but in hearts we've touched with grace, in the love we share with others, in each kind and gentle face. Your legacy is the love you leave behind. in the hands you've held and the souls you've helped to find. It's the laughter in the children, the wisdom in the old. It's the light you sparked in others, in the stories that are told. Through the trials and the triumphs, in the battles that we fight, it's the courage and the kindness that will always shine so bright. In the lessons that we teach and the dreams that we inspire, in the way we lift each other higher and higher. Your legacy is the love you leave behind, in the hands you've held and the souls you've helped to find. It's the laughter in the children, the wisdom in the old. It's the light you sparked in others, in the stories that are told. In the final song you sung, and the curtains drawing near, it's the moments filled with love that will echo year to year. In the footprints on the path that guide the lost and blind, your legacy will live on in the hearts you've left behind. Your legacy is the love you leave behind, in the hands you've held, in the souls you've helped to find. It's the laughter in the children, the wisdom in the old. It's the light you've sparked in others, in the stories that are told. So let's live with open hearts and give with all our might, for the legacy we leave is a beacon in the night, in the echoes of our actions, in the whispers of the wind. Our legacy of love is where it all begins. Our legacy of love is where it all begins.
Your legacy will live on in the hearts you've left behind.
And we want to thank the wonderful Steampunk Poe right there. He is the wonderful person behind that video. And we are so grateful to him sharing that with us today. I want to ask each of you a little bit about maybe what advice you would give someone who maybe wants to use more vintage items or start being able to maybe share more wisdom or maybe some traditional practices or anything like that. Yeah, go ahead, Carson. Yeah.
I had a really good friend who had a 18-year-old daughter, and she wanted a 64 Mustang. So they've got her the Mustang. He's a great mechanic, worked on it, rebuilt the whole thing. What she found out was that she was driving a 50-year-old car with manual steering and manual brakes. And what she really wanted was her mother's Fiat 500. And so I would say that if you want to use older stuff, you have to realize it's kind of, axiomatic, but you're using older stuff. It doesn't work like brand new things do. So you have to have some understanding.
I like that. Very good. Very good. Who wants to go? Una, do you have some thoughts here? Or Patricia, go ahead. Go ahead.
My thought is the steampunk, what is it? Steampunk?
Poe. Yeah.
Beautiful. Leave a legacy of love. Get out there and share your wisdom and your love and your guidance with just as many people as possible, especially the youth, our future generations, because they're going to stand on our shoulders and pass down what we have shared with them. So one thing I recommend is creating community, gathering together, create a wisdom circle. and include all ages, especially those youth. And I believe there's an awakening in our youth now that has a real thirst for knowledge, and they're listening. And my advice is listen to them.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm a Toastmaster. I've done it for 17 years, and our club is all in person. We have 40 or 50 people that come, and the age group goes from 21 to like 79. And it's just amazing to watch all of it just work together. And since everyone's a speaker, we all relate to each other at whatever age you naturally are. So old people aren't old, young people aren't young. And it's really enjoyable, but you have to get people to actually show up.
Yeah, I love that. Una or Robyn, what?
Yeah, I would say I think the idea of community is really important. I think whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, I'm an extrovert, so I really love being around people and interacting with them. But even for more introverted people, there are ways to participate in communities that might work for them. From a sewing perspective, I get a lot of people saying to me, like they compliment me and I go, "Thanks, I made it." One of my favorite phrases to say, by the way. and they go, "Oh wow, I'd love to be able to sew, but I can't sew." I'm just like, well, do you know what? Actually, before I learned to sew, if a button came off something, I'd give it to my husband to do. So, I went and had lessons and I learned how to sew. And so I think one of the things is if you're wanting to take one of these more traditional skills that often isn't taught at all these days, or I mean, I learned a little bit of sewing in school, but it was like, it's the one subject in my life I failed. Which is really funny now. It was a bit of a passive aggressive thing with my mum. I wanted to do art and she wanted me to do this. And yeah. So anyway, because my mum sewed, she was an amazing sewer. But unfortunately she passed away before I got into it, but I'm sure she knows somewhere and smiles on that. But yeah, don't assume because you can't do something now that you won't be able to do something. And all it takes, like there is a ton of stuff on YouTube. Like if you can't afford to go and have lessons or go to classes, you can learn from YouTube. I've set up a sewing YouTube channel to kind of share different aspects, like, of sewing as well. So, people can learn from that, but there is actually how to sew, and just understand that there's people there who will help you. So I attend these online sewing groups called a Virtual Sewing Room. It's kind of a global thing. We just all hop on Zoom and we sew together and people help each other out. So it's amazing. I think whatever it is that you want to do, whether it's upcycling furniture, whether it's clothes, whether it's some other, crochet or knitting or whatever it might be, it's a fantastic way to get in flow, to switch off your brain, and you can learn from other people. And you don't feel like it has to be done on your own. And in fact, if you go back to the kind of vintage eras, people would sew and knit together. So, and that's what people still do today.
Yeah. How about you, Robyn?
Well, I'm going to take a different stand here and ask them, where are they spending their time? Because I believe a lot of the reason why all of these beautiful values and vintage wear and practices have been forgotten is because of the lack of time and the speed of everybody working, and then we have social media, and you only need to look at how much time you've spent on your screen time to actually realize that you can actually carve out some time to learn something new, and to really realize that speed is not necessarily progress, that sometimes it's stepping back to really connect with what's important, our creativity, connection with others, and to really be able to learn the art of homemaking or making something beautiful is certainly worth carving out some time, letting go things that really often aren't important.
Yeah, that is so good. And I appreciate you making that time. And I'm just going to share that there may be resources in your local community that you don't know about, because yesterday I attended a meeting which was started through a group that I belong to on Facebook. They wanted to see if people would be interested in getting together to share skills. And at this meeting, I learned that the University of Florida offers classes in things like canning and pickling and gardening. And I'm like, really? I'm like, I would love to learn some of that stuff. I think that would be kind of cool. So do some research and see, because there are opportunities out there for you to be able to learn from other people and carve out some time, because life is short. let's take advantage of it. I'm going to share one more video because it's just a little silly fun one that I put together. So I'm going to share that right now. So there's lots of stuff going on today on March 2nd as we're recording this. I just thought that'd be kind of cool. So we've got oh my gosh, about 2 minutes left or something. So I'm going to just go around one more time and just 2-3 words or one sentence of one thing to leave our audience with today. Patricia, I'm gonna pick on you first.
Stand up tall. Stand proud of your age, and just know that your wisdom, your guidance, and the people you touch leaves your legacy and changes them for the better.
Awesome. Love it. Carson, how about you?
Aside from I can recite Dr. Seuss. Remember how smart you were when you were 23 and 24. You were pretty bright. Understand that those kids today are just like we were. Just remember.
Very good. I love that. Robyn, how about you?
Well, true art and true skill is a love affair with time. And so be aware of where you're spending your time and what really matters.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
I would say to look to be more of a creator than a consumer.
Oh, yeah. Very good. Wise words. Wise words. You are all wise. Your age is, and maybe that's me making this noise. I'm sorry if it is. But I really do appreciate all of you for being here today. And I hope all of you in the audience today got some value out of it as well, and make sure tell a friend about this. if you really did get some value, share this video, share the replay with someone, and because we're here, all of us are here to help you live a fabulous life. So you know what? I'm still going to go around because we still got 1 more minute. So I'm going to go around 1 more minute, one more time, and just one word leave your legacy on the show today. What would it be? Here, Una, go ahead.
Oh, come back to me.
Okay, Patricia, how about you?
All you need is love.
Good word. All right, Robyn, how about you?
Don't forget the values and the wisdom of the past.
All right. Carson.
Live in the moment. We're not promised anymore.
Excellent. And Una.
Take what works for you from the past and make it yours.
Yeah, I love it.
Well done. Well said. All right. You heard it here, folks. So thank you all for being with us today. I hope you will join us next time when we have another fabulous show. And we'll see you next week.